I never thought my life could flip upside down in a single night, but that evening when I opened the front door, my world shattered. My husband wasn't alone. There she was, laughing like they were the only two people on earth, and for a split second I couldn't breathe. My hands gripped the doorknob, knuckles white, as my stomach dropped. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and him was crumbling in front of me. For months, I'd had this gnawing feeling that something was off. Little things at first, texts he'd hide, phone calls in the middle of the night, excuses about work emergencies. I'd brushed it off, telling myself I was just overthinking it, that maybe I was imagining things, but my gut knew better. That gut feeling had been screaming at me for weeks, and now the truth was staring me right in the face. He had always been the charming one, the guy everyone wanted to be around. He made me laugh on my worst days, told me I looked stunning even when I felt like a mess, and acted like nothing could ever go wrong. But charm can be a weapon, and I'd been blind to how he used it to hide the cracks in our marriage. I started remembering the tiny things I'd ignored, the receipts for dinners at places he'd never mentioned, his habit of leaving his phone just slightly unlocked, the subtle smirk when I asked where he'd been. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the scene in my head, that laugh, that casual intimacy, the way he looked at her. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. I needed answers. I needed proof. I found myself sneaking his phone while he was in the shower, shaking as I scrolled through his messages. And there it was, flirty, intimate texts between him and someone I didn't even know. My chest tightened. My hands trembled, but I couldn't stop reading. Everything I thought was real was a lie. The next morning, I had to know more. I followed him without letting him notice, desperate to see the truth with my own eyes. He parked outside some fancy apartment building, and there she was, waiting with a smile that felt like a punch in the gut. Anger boiled inside me, but so did clarity. I couldn't let this slide. I wasn't going to be the girl who got played and stayed quiet. I had to act, but I needed a plan. Over the next few days, I watched him carefully. Every late-night text, every suspicious excuse, every sly look, it all added up. I started documenting everything, times, places, what he said, what he did. I became obsessed, but in a focused, calculated way. I wasn't just hurt, I was pissed, and that anger slowly turned into resolve. I was going to reclaim my life, my dignity, and my power. I thought back to our earlier years when everything seemed perfect. College dates, late-night drives, random adventures, moments that now felt like distant memories from someone else's life. I realized that betrayal wasn't just about cheating. It was about breaking trust, manipulating love, and taking for granted the woman who had given everything. That fire inside me grew, fueled by memories and the raw sting of betrayal. Then came the breakthrough. A friend let slip something in passing, something I almost ignored, but my gut screamed I couldn't. He had been hiding not just emotional lies, but financial ones too, plans about money and assets that I had no clue about. It wasn't just cheating, it was deception at every level. Suddenly, I saw the bigger picture. This wasn't just about heartbreak, it was about reclaiming control over every part of my life that he thought he could manipulate. I started strategizing quietly. I played the supportive, clueless wife while gathering proof and planning my move. Every smile he threw at her, every secretive message, every lie, I filed it away in my mind, ready for the moment I would strike back. And with each passing day, the plan became clearer. I wasn't just seeking revenge, I was plotting justice, and I knew the payoff would be sweet. I spent nights awake running scenarios in my head. How would I confront him? How would I expose her? How would I make sure he realized the woman he betrayed wasn't someone he could toy with? The anger mixed with anticipation, each fueling the other, until I knew one thing for sure: I was no longer a victim. I was the storm he never saw coming. And that's when it hit me, the perfect moment for the first move. I just had to wait for him to step right into it. Patience would make it so much more satisfying, and when the moment came, there would be no turning back. I couldn't believe what he said to me that night. "It's none of your business," he snapped, tossing his keys on the counter like I was some annoying kid asking too many questions. My heart raced, and I felt my hands clench into fists. That line, that tone, it was the final straw. I had tried being the loving, understanding wife, but the truth was staring me in the face, and I wasn't about to play dumb anymore. I sat down hard on the couch, trying to calm my shaking hands while he paced back and forth like a caged animal. I could feel the tension thick in the air, like it was about to snap in a million pieces. I couldn't stop thinking about the way he laughed with her, how casual he was in his betrayal. And now, in our own living room, he had the nerve to act like nothing was wrong. I wanted to scream, to throw something across the room, but I kept my cool. I had to think. If I lost it now, he'd know he still had power over me. That fire in my chest, the one that burned with betrayal, anger, and humiliation, turned into something sharper. Focus. I needed a plan, and it had to be perfect. Over the next few days, I pretended nothing was wrong. I smiled, made small talk, and acted like the clueless wife who had no idea what was happening. But behind the mask, I was digging deeper. I checked his schedules, subtlety watched where he went, and listened to conversations he thought were private. And man, the stuff I found made my blood boil. Secret dinners, hotel visits, late-night calls disguised as work emergencies. He was playing me for a fool, and I wasn't about to let him win. I called up a friend I could trust, someone outside our circle, to vent and gather advice. She was horrified when I told her the details and asked the obvious question, "Are you seriously gonna just let him get away with it?" That's when it clicked. I couldn't just sit back. I had to hit back in a way he'd never see coming. Something smart, satisfying, and messy enough to leave him speechless. The next few nights, I stayed up late, jotting down notes and sketching out a plan. I thought about confrontation, exposure, and subtle sabotage. I even replayed some of the happier times in my head, the way he used to hold me, kiss me, and swear nothing would ever come between us. Those memories made my stomach twist. They weren't just sweet, they were bait he'd used to keep me blind. And then the drama escalated. One evening, he came home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. He tried to act casual, like he'd just been at a friend's place. I didn't even flinch. I let him talk, watched his expressions, and waited. I asked one question casually, as if it didn't matter. "So how was Jessica's place tonight?" His jaw dropped and his face went pale. He stammered, tried to cover, but the slip was there. That tiny crack in his armor told me everything I needed. I decided it was time to escalate subtly. I didn't want him to know I knew everything yet. I planted small hints, nudges that would make him sweat, little reminders that he wasn't as slick as he thought. Every time he lied, I recorded the inconsistencies in my mind. Every time he tried to manipulate me, I countered with calm, collected responses. He started noticing the change in me, that icy edge that wasn't there before. And for the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. It was a strange mix: anger, hurt, and exhilaration. I realized that betrayal wasn't just emotional pain, it was ammunition. I could use it to reclaim my dignity and make him realize that messing with me came with consequences. My mind raced, thinking of the perfect setup to make him squirm, the moment when the truth would hit him like a ton of bricks. I imagined the look on his face, the shock, the regret, and yeah, a little satisfaction bloomed in me. I spent the weekend observing him even closer. I learned his patterns, his habits, the way he tried to sneak around without being noticed. I even discovered she had her own routines, times when he would meet her, and small giveaways that proved their intimacy. Each discovery tightened the coil of my plan. I wasn't just collecting evidence, I was preparing my grand move, one that would leave him completely exposed and me in control. By the end of the week, I realized something important. Revenge wasn't just about anger, it was about justice, about showing him that he couldn't disrespect me without consequence. I wasn't doing this to hurt him out of spite. I was doing it to reclaim my life, to remind myself that I mattered more than his lies and betrayals. That sense of clarity made me feel stronger than I had in months. And just when I thought I had a handle on everything, he made a mistake. A careless comment slipped out in front of a mutual friend, one that revealed more than he intended. It was the opening I needed. The first step in a plan that would shake the foundation of our marriage and turn the tables completely. I smiled to myself, a dangerous little smile, because I knew the game had officially begun. And he had no clue how far I was willing to go. I knew something was off the second he walked into the room, because the look on his face said he realized a secret of his was about to blow up, and he had no idea how much I already knew. His eyes darted around, nervous and jittery, and for the first time, he wasn't the cool, confident husband who thought he could get away with murder. Something had slipped, and he was terrified I'd caught it. He was right to be scared. I sat there quietly, watching him unravel, pretending I didn't notice the panic behind his fake smile. He muttered something about having a rough day, but his hands were shaking so bad he dropped his wallet on the floor. I almost laughed. Part of me wanted to ask what exactly he'd screwed up this time, but I bit my tongue. The more he thought I was clueless, the better my plan would work. His fear was the first crack I needed, and watching him stumble gave me a rush of confidence I hadn't felt in months. As the days passed, I kept my cool, even though every lie he told made my skin crawl. He tried harder to act normal, but the guilt was eating him alive. At night, he tossed and turned, mumbling in his sleep, sweating like he was being interrogated by the FBI. I'd lie next to him, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking how poetic it was that the man who betrayed me was now drowning in his own paranoia. I kept gathering information, piecing together everything I needed. Phone records, bank statements, screenshots, little slips of the tongue, every detail was fuel. And then, one afternoon, while he was in the shower, his phone buzzed. A message popped up at the top of the screen. "Can't wait for tonight, I miss you already." It was the woman, the same one he swore he barely talked to. My blood boiled, but instead of reacting, I grabbed my notebook and wrote down the time. I wasn't letting anger cloud my strategy. I needed clarity if my plan was going to hit the way I wanted. Later that evening, he claimed he had to run to the store. I nodded with a smile that probably would have scared him if he paid attention. 10 minutes after he left, I grabbed my keys and followed, careful to stay far enough behind to avoid suspicion. He drove across town to a sleek apartment building, the same place I'd seen before. I watched as he hurried inside, trying to look casual but practically sprinting. I stayed in my car, breathing slow and steady, letting the anger settle into something sharper. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a whole double life he thought I was too stupid to see. I stayed parked for almost an hour, trying to keep my imagination from spiraling. It was torture, sitting there in the dark, imagining them together, laughing, touching, doing all the things he used to do with me. It hurt like hell, but that pain didn't break me, it refined me. The longer I sat there, the clearer my mind became. When he finally left the building, he didn't look happy or satisfied, he looked stressed, like even the affair was weighing on him. That's when I realized something huge. He wasn't just cheating for fun, he was hiding something deeper, something he was terrified I'd find out. And the more scared he was, the more curious I became. The next day, I dug deeper. I checked our shared accounts and found unusual charges, expensive gifts, random hotel reservations, and transfers to an account I didn't recognize. My heart dropped when I saw the totals. He wasn't cheating out of boredom. He was draining money, our money, on someone else. And then came the moment everything shifted. A bank alert popped up, notifying me of a large withdrawal he made without telling me. That was it. That was the final puzzle piece. He wasn't just betraying me emotionally, he was betraying me financially, planning something behind my back, something big enough to hide thousands of dollars. I sat at the table, staring at the numbers, and a calm washed over me. I wasn't going to confront him yelling. I wasn't going to beg or cry or ask why. No, I was going to make sure that everything he thought he controlled slipped right through his fingers. He came home later that night acting extra sweet, like he sensed the storm coming. I let him hug me, pretending everything was fine, even though my heart was pounding. He smelled like her perfume, but instead of breaking, I smiled. If he only knew what was coming. Little did he realize, he had no idea I was already 3 steps ahead, and what I was planning wasn't just revenge, it was justice. The kind he wouldn't walk away from without scars. When I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling while he snored beside me, a single thought repeated in my mind: he thinks he's winning. But he had no idea the game was about to flip entirely, and I was going to be the one dealing the final blow. I don't know what hurt more, the betrayal itself or the realization that the man I built my whole life around didn't even flinch while breaking me. That thought kept looping in my head the next morning as I watched him sipping coffee across the table like nothing was wrong. It hit me deep, right in that place you try to protect even when the world is falling apart. And for the first time, I felt something crack inside me, not weakness, but a strange kind of strength I didn't know I had. He looked up at me, offering a soft smile, one he used to give when we were newlyweds. I almost laughed. He had no idea how transparent he had become, how obvious every lie was now. His charm felt fake, like a cheap mask you could buy at a dollar store. I stirred my coffee slowly, letting the silence stretch between us, watching him squirm just a little. It amazed me how easily guilt made people uncomfortable. All day, that feeling in my chest pushed me forward. Not sadness, not anger, determination. The emotional punch he delivered wasn't breaking me, it was shaping me. I went through old photos, old memories, and every single one felt tainted. It was wild how someone you love could change the meaning of everything with just one choice. But looking through those moments didn't make me miss him, it made me realize how much I deserved better. Still, the pain lingered. the kind that hits when you least expect it. When I walked into our bedroom, the smell of his cologne hit me and suddenly tears blurred my vision. I hated crying. I hated giving the situation that power, but grief doesn't ask permission, it just shows up. I sat on the edge of the bed, letting the tears fall quietly before wiping them away. If he was planning on breaking me, he was going to be disappointed. After pulling myself together, I got back to work. My plan was moving into its next stage. That afternoon, I reached out to someone who could help me understand the financial side of things a little better. I didn't tell them everything, but I said enough. Enough to get clarity on what those strange transactions meant. The more I learned, the more disgusted I felt. He wasn't just spending money on another woman, he was hiding funds, preparing for some secret future without me. I almost couldn't believe it. All those nights when he said he'd been working late, lies. All those moments where he claimed he was exhausted from stress, manipulation. He'd been building some fancy escape plan and I was never supposed to find out, but I did. And weirdly, instead of falling apart, I felt more alive than I had in months. When he came home that evening, he looked tired more than usual. Guilt eats people alive from the inside. He kissed my cheek and I forced myself not to pull away. He didn't deserve that affection anymore, but he didn't deserve to know I knew either. Not yet. His downfall would be sweeter if he walked right into it believing everything was fine. As the night went on, I watched him out of the corner of my eye, the way he avoided looking at me too long, the way he checked his phone like he expected a message any second, the way he jumped when it buzzed, then quickly silenced it. Pathetic, every movement, every twitch, every drop of sweat on his forehead made one thing clearer: he was losing control, and I was gaining it. Later, when he went to take a shower, I grabbed his phone again. This time, the messages were even worse: plans, promises, and little fantasies he was sharing with her. Things he had once said to me. I felt my heart tighten, but instead of breaking, it burned with purpose. I took pictures, saved every detail, evidence, proof. Things he would never be able to deny once everything came crashing down, but then I found something else, something that made me freeze. A message from her saying, "Did you talk to your lawyer yet? We need to get this moving." Lawyer, my throat went dry. He was planning something legal, something serious, something involving our marriage, maybe a divorce behind my back. Maybe a financial separation, maybe something worse. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling a cold rush sweep over me. He wasn't just cheating. He was restructuring his entire life in secret. He was planning an escape where he walked away clean and I walked away with nothing. My breath shook, but I didn't panic. Shock turned into steel. If he wanted to play dirty, he was about to learn that I could play smarter. He came out of the bathroom humming to himself, towel around his shoulders, and kissed my forehead like he hadn't just stabbed me metaphorically 20 times. I smiled sweetly and wished him good night. Inside, I whispered to myself, "You won't see me coming." And I meant every word. I wasn't going to let him walk away clean, not this time. The moment I realized he was scheming to erase me from his life completely, the fire inside me ignited. That's when I knew revenge wasn't just an option. It was a necessity. I wanted him to feel the same gut-wrenching betrayal he had made me feel, and I wanted him to know there was no coming back from what I had planned. That weekend, while he was out meeting a friend, I got to work. Every little slip, every secret, every lie I'd been collecting over the past weeks turned into ammunition. I printed screenshots, highlighted suspicious bank transfers, and made copies of messages. I even jotted down the times he'd lied about locations, excuses, and late nights. It wasn't just revenge, it was building a case that would hit him harder than any argument or fight ever could. I sat back in my chair and smiled, thinking about the first move. He thought he was clever, thinking I had no idea about his double life. Little did he know I was 3 steps ahead. I was going to make him sweat, make him panic, make him realize that the woman he had underestimated had turned into a storm he couldn't outrun. That evening, he walked in like nothing had changed. I pretended to be cheerful, asking about his day and laughing at his tired jokes. He didn't notice the subtle shift in my energy, the calm that was actually a quiet storm. I let him think he had the upper hand. Let him get comfortable. That's when I knew it would hurt him more, when it all came crashing down. Later that night, I confronted him, not directly, not yet. I left evidence where he couldn't miss it. His phone charger left next to screenshots on the counter, a notebook casually placed where he'd find it, hints of knowledge in casual conversations. Each piece was a little trigger, a tiny needle that would poke him until he couldn't ignore it. And sure enough, he started to sweat. He was twitchy, looking over his shoulder, checking his phone constantly, pacing around the living room like a kid caught sneaking out. Then the text came from her. I saw it pop up on his phone while he left it unattended for a second. "Are you sure she's noticing anything?" I smirked because I knew the answer. He had no idea that the woman he'd been messing with was fully aware of everything. I had him cornered without even speaking a word. The next day, I reached out to a mutual friend who had always disliked her. I didn't spill the full story, just a few subtle hints and questions about her intentions, planting seeds that would make them paranoid. Gossip is powerful, it makes people act recklessly, and that's exactly what I wanted him to do. I wanted cracks, mistakes, anything I could use to push my plan forward. He tried to keep acting normal, but the stress was written all over his face. I noticed how he avoided eye contact when I mentioned casual things about work or friends, how he flinched when a notification sounded on his phone. Every little reaction told me I was on the right track. He had no idea how fully I had anticipated every move he would make. I spent the weekend preparing the next stage. I planned subtle confrontations that would force him to reveal more, planting traps in conversation. Every word I said, every question I asked, was designed to uncover another secret. And every secret I uncovered made the plan sharper, cleaner, deadlier. This wasn't about rage anymore, it was about precision. Finally, the moment came. I left a folder on the kitchen table, neatly labeled, visible but not in a confrontational way. I wanted him to see it and panic internally before I even spoke. It contained everything: messages, bank records, suspicious transactions, proof of dates and times he'd lied. He walked in and the first thing he saw was that folder. His eyes went wide, he froze. For a second, the confident, smug man I had married vanished. All that remained was the scared, caught-in-the-act version, the one I had been waiting for. I didn't say a word. I just watched as he picked it up, flipping through the pages, scanning the evidence. The color drained from his face. Sweat formed on his brow, and in that moment I realized something beautiful. He finally understood the magnitude of what he had done. I sat back, letting him process. I could almost see his brain working, running through excuses, wondering what to say, how to fix this. But there was no fixing this, not anymore. This was the moment when the scales tipped, when the woman he betrayed became the one in control. And as he looked up at me, eyes wide and guilty, I whispered calmly, almost sweetly, "You thought you could get away with it." Guess again, he didn't speak. He couldn't. The truth had hit harder than anything I could have said, and in that silence I knew the game had officially changed. I never expected what happened next. One afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk about your husband. He's hiding something big." My heart skipped a beat. My first instinct was to brush it off, another random scam, probably, but something in my gut told me this was different. I clicked the message cautiously and my hands trembled when I read the rest. "Meet me tonight, don't bring him. Don't tell anyone." I spent the day pacing, my mind racing. Who could know what I didn't, and why now? The timing was uncanny, like the universe had decided to throw me a lifeline just when I was plotting my revenge. I felt a mix of fear and curiosity, the kind that makes your stomach tighten but keeps you moving forward. When night fell, I drove to the location, an old diner on the outskirts of town. It was dimly lit and nearly empty, perfect for secrets. I parked and waited, watching the shadows flicker on the walls, every rustle outside making my heart thump harder. After a few minutes, a woman appeared, cautious, glancing around like she didn't want to be seen. She slid into the booth across from me, eyes wide but determined. "I'm telling you this because he's bad news, worse than you think," she whispered. My stomach dropped. "He's been playing you for months, there's more than just the affair." "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to stay calm. My mind raced through every transaction, every late night, every suspicious excuse. "What else could there be?" She leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Money, assets, your whole future. He's been plotting behind your back, and that woman he's seeing, she's part of it." My pulse quickened. My husband wasn't just cheating, he was scheming something big, and I had underestimated it. I left the diner with more questions than answers, but also a new sense of urgency. Every step he took, every plan he made, I had to intercept. And now I had another weapon, knowledge, the kind that could completely topple him if I played it right. Back at home, he greeted me like nothing had happened. He was still acting like the confident guy I'd once loved, but I could see it, the slightest flicker of worry in his eyes, the subtle tension in his shoulders. I smiled to myself. He had no idea that the storm was gathering right under his nose. That night, I stayed up, reviewing everything, the notes, the messages, the evidence. I added what the woman from the diner had told me. Suddenly, a bigger picture emerged. It wasn't just an affair. He had been plotting a way to cut me out, drain my savings, maybe even manipulate our friends and family to side with him. The audacity made my blood boil. I knew I couldn't let this slide. The next day, I subtly tested him, a casual question here, a pointed remark there. His reactions were exactly what I expected: guilt, panic, slight flinches. He was walking on eggshells now, and I was the one holding the hammer. That afternoon, I got another clue. One of his coworkers accidentally mentioned a meeting he had scheduled late at night, away from work, supposedly confidential. I jotted it down in my notebook, connecting the dots with the diner woman's warning. This was it. This was the opening I needed to hit him where it hurt the most. The adrenaline coursing through me was wild. I wasn't just seeking revenge anymore, I was orchestrating a takedown. Every lie he had told, every secret he had kept, was about to explode in his face. And I could hardly wait to watch him scramble, to see him realize that he had underestimated me, the woman he thought he could manipulate and discard. By the time he came home that evening, I was ready. Every piece of evidence carefully arranged, every plan aligned, every detail sharpened to perfection. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat calmly on the couch, and waited for him to walk in. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes your chest feel tight, and I loved it. When he finally stepped through the door, I gave him a slow, sweet smile. "Long day?" I asked casually, though inside I was buzzing with anticipation. His eyes flickered to the folder I'd left out, the one with all the compiled evidence. He froze for a fraction of a second. That tiny pause told me everything. He knew I knew more than he thought. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. He was about to learn the hard way that betraying me came with consequences. Big ones, life-altering ones. I should have known that following him that night would change everything, but I didn't expect how fast things would spiral. When I parked a couple blocks away and watched him sneak into that building, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. It wasn't some restaurant or a bar or even a hotel. It was an office, dark, closed for hours, blinds drawn, and the craziest part, he wasn't alone. A second figure slipped inside right behind him, and the sight nearly made my breath catch. I wasn't sure who it was, but something told me I was about to learn a truth that would blow everything wide open. I waited in the car, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. Every minute felt like an hour. I kept asking myself the same question on repeat. What else could he possibly be hiding from me? I thought I had already uncovered the worst, but deep down, I knew this was something bigger, something that went beyond cheating, beyond lies, beyond betrayal. Finally, when I couldn't sit still anymore, I got out of the car and crept closer. My heart was pounding so loud I was afraid someone would hear it. The back door was cracked open just enough for a sliver of light to spill onto the pavement. I slipped inside quietly, my breath shallow, my mind wired with adrenaline. Voices echoed from down the hall. Low, urgent. I recognized his first, my husband, sounding panicked, on edge. Then the other voice, smooth, controlled, almost cold. It wasn't a woman, it was a man, and he sounded like he was giving orders. I edged closer, stopping right before the doorway. Their voices got clearer. "You said this would be handled by now," the man snapped. "She's getting suspicious. You've screwed this up." My husband sighed, voice breaking. I'm trying. She wasn't supposed to find anything. I didn't think she'd dig that deep. My blood ran cold. They were talking about me. My throat tightened. I had known he was hiding things, but hearing him talk about me like I was a problem to be handled made my stomach twist. The man spoke again, calmer now. "If she figures out the account transfers, it'll be over." Account transfers. My eyes widened. So the woman from the diner had been right. This wasn't just cheating. This was financial manipulation, stealing. Planning an escape route that didn't include me, my husband whispered, "I'll deal with her, just give me a little time. She's not stupid. I can't just—" "That's obvious," the man cut him off. "But time is running out." For a moment, everything around me faded into a blur. The lies, the nights he came home late, the secrecy, it all clicked. He wasn't just cheating on me, he was preparing to leave me with nothing. He was conspiring with someone else to move money behind my back, to isolate me, to make sure he walked away clean. The realization hit me so hard my knees almost buckled. I wasn't just fighting a cheating husband, I was fighting a calculated betrayal designed to ruin me. A loud thump suddenly echoed through the hallway and I jumped. The voices went silent. I panicked, stepping backward, but my heel hit a loose piece of debris and it skidded across the floor with a sharp scrape. Their conversation stopped. My husband's voice tightened. "Did you hear that?" I froze. For a second, everything in me screamed to run, but my body wouldn't move. Footsteps approached. Slow, cautious, getting closer. I backed away from the doorway, praying they wouldn't come out far enough to see me. But of course, luck had never been on my side with him. The footsteps stopped right at the end of the hall. A shadow shifted on the wall. Someone was just seconds away from spotting me. My heart thrashed violently in my chest. If they saw me, everything I'd been planning, every step of revenge, every card I had stacked would crumble. They'd shut everything down, hide the money, cover every trail. I couldn't let that happen. I held my breath and ducked into a nearby supply closet. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to calm the tremor in my hands. The footsteps grew closer and closer. I could hear breathing, steady, controlled, way too close. A hand touched the closet door. My whole body flinched. I felt the handle jerk slightly, like someone was testing if it was locked. Then silence. I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the footsteps retreated. I waited another minute before peeking out, carefully checking the hall. They were gone. The moment I reached my car, I broke down, shaking hard. Not from fear, but from fury, raw, burning fury. He wasn't just betraying me emotionally. He was trying to erase me financially, strategically, ruthlessly. But now I knew the truth. And that meant the game had officially shifted into a new level, one where I couldn't afford a single misstep. Because this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was war. I never thought I'd reach a point where the pain didn't sting, it burned. It wasn't the soft ache of heartbreak anymore. It was a deep, shaking anger mixed with something even worse. Disappointment so heavy it felt like it was crushing my chest. Standing alone in my living room after that night, I felt the emotional weight hit me all at once. I trusted this man. I loved him with everything I had. And he turned around and tried to destroy me like I was some disposable extra in his life. That realization broke something inside me, not in a way that made me weak, no, it sharpened me. It molded me into someone who wasn't going to let him win. I wiped my tears, stared at myself in the mirror, and whispered, "He's not taking anything else from you." And that was the moment I knew I was done being scared. The next morning, I started planning the emotional side of my revenge. Not just paperwork, not just evidence. No, this time I wanted him to feel every ounce of betrayal he put me through. I wanted him to look at me and realize he had lost the one thing he thought he'd always control, me. I started by pulling away emotionally. I stopped reacting the way he expected me to. No yelling, no arguing. No begging for answers, just silence. Numb, cold silence. When he walked into a room, I barely looked up. When he spoke, I answered with short, clipped responses. When he tried to touch me, I moved away casually like he was a stranger I just didn't feel comfortable with. And God, he hated it. He tried to joke it off at first like I was just in a mood, but the unease in his voice betrayed him. He kept trying to figure out what I knew, how much I'd discovered. The paranoia was eating him alive, and watching him squirm felt like poetic justice. I started waking up early, getting dressed, leaving the house without telling him where I was going. I could see it drove him insane. He kept asking, "Where were you, and why didn't you answer your phone?" I smiled inside every time I shrugged and said, "Didn't feel like talking." He had no idea what to do with that. He expected tears, drama, confrontation, but not calm detachment. I saw him studying me when he thought I wasn't looking. He wasn't sure if I was plotting, cheating, leaving, or losing my mind. That confusion made him panic, and I reveled in it. One night, he tried to corner me in the kitchen. "We need to talk," he said, sounding nervous. I kept chopping vegetables like I didn't hear him. "Hey, can you look at me?" he pushed. I finally glanced up. "About what?" He shifted awkwardly. "Us, things feel off, you seem distant." I paused, looked at him flatly and said, "Everyone gets tired eventually," the look on his face. Priceless, it was the first crack in his fake confidence, and I wasn't anywhere near finished. As the days went on, I noticed how his mood shifted. He grew clingy, overly nice, offering to help with chores, buying small gifts like that would erase months of lying. I accepted them with a cold smile, thanking him like he was a polite coworker instead of my husband. He hated that too. He craved control, my reactions, my emotions, my validation, and now he had none of it. One afternoon, I walked in to find him sitting on the edge of the bed, staring into space. His phone was in his hand, and the screen was lit up with messages, hers, dozens of them. I didn't even bother to read them. I just reached over, took the phone, and tossed it onto the dresser like trash. He jumped. What are you doing? I looked at him calmly. Relax, I'm not the one hiding anything. His face turned pale. He knew exactly what I meant, but he didn't know how much I actually knew. That fear, that uncertainty, it was delicious. Later, he followed me into the hallway. Are you planning something? I turned slowly. You're the one who's been planning things behind my back. Why would I need to? His mouth opened, then closed like he couldn't find the right lie fast enough. I walked past him without another word. I didn't need to fight him anymore. He was fighting with his own guilt, paranoia, and the unknown. That night, he barely slept. I heard him pacing in the living room, muttering under his breath, opening and closing drawers, checking his phone over and over. Meanwhile, I slept like a baby. It felt good, like reclaiming power through quiet, steady confidence. The next morning, things got even better. He tried checking our shared accounts, only to find that I had already separated my funds. Calmly, legally, quietly, he walked into the bedroom with panic in his eyes, trying to act casual but failing miserably. Did you do something with our money? I didn't even look up from my book. Just protecting what's mine. The way he sank onto the bed, head in his hands, told me everything. He knew I wasn't the naive, trusting woman he thought he could manipulate. Not anymore. And when he finally whispered, voice cracking, "What are you planning?" I smiled for real this time. "You'll see," I said softly, just like I did. Because the emotional shift was only the beginning, the real blow was coming next. The moment had finally come. I had been patient, careful, and methodical for weeks, and now I had everything in place. My husband thought he could manipulate, cheat, and control, but he didn't realize how sharp I had become. Tonight, he would learn the hard way that betrayal always comes with consequences. He came home late, as usual, thinking I was distracted, tired, or oblivious. But I had been awake for hours, reviewing every little detail, every message, every transaction. I had laid out the evidence like a silent, deadly trap. When he walked in, I was sitting calmly at the kitchen table, sipping wine, a small smile on my lips. "Long day?" I asked innocently. He froze for a second like he sensed something, then tried to relax. "Yeah, just work stuff," he mumbled, glancing around. I gestured to the folder in front of me. "You'll want to sit down for this." His face went pale, he knew. That slight quiver in his hands, the way his jaw tightened, it was exactly the reaction I had been waiting for. He had no idea how much I knew, how long I had been watching, documenting, and planning. I opened the folder, flipping through pages of evidence, screenshots of texts, bank statements, receipts, and notes detailing his every lie and manipulation. I didn't say much. I let him read, let the weight of his betrayal settle like a hammer on his chest. He couldn't speak. He tried, but the words wouldn't come. I could almost see him thinking, how did she find out? What's next? I leaned back in my chair, calm and collected, and watched him unravel. "I guess this is what happens when you underestimate someone," I said softly. "You think you're untouchable. You think you can cheat, lie, and manipulate without consequences. But here we are." He swallowed hard, eyes darting around like he was looking for a way out. I can explain." "Explain," I repeated, voice steady, almost mocking. "Explain how you thought you could betray me, ruin our marriage, and get away with it. Explain how you thought hiding money, lying, and sneaking around was okay." He opened his mouth again, but I raised my hand slightly, cutting him off. "Save it. I don't want excuses. I want accountability. I want you to feel what it's like to be on the other side of the truth, to see the chaos you've created reflected right back at you." For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. That fear was delicious, a long overdue taste of justice. I had carefully planned this, not to humiliate, not to destroy, but to show him the power of someone he thought he could break. I pulled out another set of papers, documents showing the financial manipulation he had planned. "I've protected everything," I said, sliding them across the table. "Your little plan to walk away with my money didn't happen. Not a single cent, and now I get to control the narrative." He slumped back in his chair, pale and defeated. The man who had strutted around thinking he was untouchable was reduced to a shadow, a person stripped of confidence, stripped of control. I could almost hear the gears in his head grinding, trying to figure out how to fix what was already broken. Then I dropped the final bomb. "And don't even think about her," I said, voice low and cold. "She's irrelevant now. Your lies, your affair, your schemes, they all lead back to you. You'll have to deal with the consequences yourself." He looked like he might break down completely, and maybe he did, internally at least. He was trapped in a web of his own making, and I was the one holding the threads. I leaned forward slightly, just enough to let him feel the intensity. "You wanted control, you wanted to play games, guess what, you're outmatched. You picked the wrong person to mess with. The silence in the room was heavy. I could hear my own breathing, steady and calm, contrasting sharply with the tension radiating off him. He had spent months thinking he was winning, but now the scales had tipped. I wasn't just exposing him, I was reclaiming everything he tried to steal. For the first time, he saw me not as a wife he could manipulate, but as a force he could not contain. And the look on his face, that mix of regret, fear, and disbelief, was exactly the justice I had envisioned. I gathered the folders, neatly stacked them, and walked toward the door. Think carefully about your next move, I said over my shoulder, because from now on, you're playing by my rules. And with that, I left him in the kitchen, surrounded by the ruins of his lies, finally realizing what betrayal truly costs. I didn't expect the final act to hit me like this. After weeks of plotting, waiting, and letting him squirm under the weight of his own lies, I thought I had seen everything. But life, of course, had one more twist in store. I was home alone, reviewing the last pieces of evidence for the 100th time, making sure everything was airtight. And then the doorbell rang. I froze. Who could it be at this hour? He was supposed to be out. I didn't hear any car outside. My pulse skyrocketed. With a cautious hand, I peeked through the peephole. It was her, the woman, standing there, smug smile plastered on her face, confident like she had no idea how much chaos she had already walked into. My stomach churned, but I didn't panic, not anymore, not after everything. I opened the door slowly, pretending to be surprised. "Oh, hey," I said lightly. She tilted her head. "I thought I'd drop by and see if we could talk. Settle some things." Her voice was sweet, syrupy, like she had no idea how irrelevant she was. I stepped aside and let her in, motioning to the living room. Calm, collected, like I was inviting a guest instead of an intruder. Inside, I watched her carefully, noticing every twitch, every nervous glance. She didn't know it yet, but she was walking into my trap. I said casually, I always wondered how someone could get tangled up in a mess like this. I smiled, but it was sharp, cutting. Funny thing is, everything your boyfriend told you about me, total lies. Her face faltered. What are you talking about? I leaned forward slightly. Oh, I know all about your late-night texts, your dinners, your little meetups. I know everything. And I know what he's been planning, all those money transfers, the secret accounts, the lies you played a part in it. Her mouth opened, then closed. Panic flickered across her face. She hadn't counted on me knowing. That was my first little victory. I watched her squirm. But don't worry, I continued, my voice calm, deliberate, slicing through the tension. I've already handled the financial side. You can't touch a dime. And as for him, I paused, letting the words hang heavy in the air. He's already paying the price. Her eyes widened, realization dawning. You mean, yes, I interrupted. You were just a pawn. And now it's time for me to end this game. She froze, and I could see the fear setting in. She had expected to manipulate, to charm, to play a part in his scheme. But I wasn't anyone's victim, and I wasn't someone she could intimidate. I gave her a slow, calculated smile. I've already exposed him to everything. Friends, family, evidence, proof of the lies, the cheating, the money. He's cornered. And thanks to your involvement, he's going down faster than he ever imagined. Her lips quivered. You can't, I can, I said simply. And I did. Then came the final blow. I picked up my phone and hit send, a single message to a select few people who mattered most in both our lives. Photos, screenshots, and a careful explanation of everything he tried to hide. I watched her pale as the implications settled in. By the way, I said, my tone deceptively sweet, he has no way to cover any of this now, and you're just collateral damage. She bolted toward the door, but I was faster. Good luck trying to explain yourself, I said, blocking her path for a moment, letting her feel that tiny taste of control slip through her fingers. Then I stepped aside, letting her flee. I closed the door and leaned against it, heart hammering. Relief, exhaustion, and a sense of victory washed over me. He had thought he could break me, cheat on me, and manipulate everyone in our world. But I had turned it all around. I was the one holding the power now. I had reclaimed everything, my dignity, my financial security, my life. When he finally came home, he knew immediately. I didn't have to say a word. The look on his face, panic, disbelief, horror, told me everything. His smugness, his arrogance, all of it evaporated in the shadow of my planning and patience. I walked past him slowly, casually, and whispered, "Game over," and it was. For the first time in months, I felt free, not just free from his lies, but free from fear, betrayal, and the pain that had once consumed me. I had survived, I had conquered. I had turned my anger into power, my heartbreak into strategy. And in the end, justice had been served not in violence, not in revenge alone, but in truth. He had underestimated me from the start. And that was his ultimate mistake. I smiled, a real, unshakable smile, and finally let myself breathe. The storm was over.